Hello and welcome to another episode of PodcastDX, the show that brings you interviews with people just like you, whose lives were forever changed by a medical diagnosis. I'm Lita.
I'm Ron.
And Jean Marie will not be here with us today. She unfortunately caught a pretty bad cold. Collectively, we are the hosts of PodcastDX. On today's show, we are talking about juvenile idiopathic arthritis with Effie. Effie is a writer, a blogger, an advocate, and an activist. She was diagnosed with juvenile arthritis 15 years ago, currently resides in the Chicago area. I didn't really check to see if it was a suburb like us, but she's here in the Windy City area, and she's working on her debut children's book.
Hi, Effie. How are you? Thank you for joining us today.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
It's wonderful. And Effie, could you please tell us what is juvenile arthritis?
So juvenile arthritis, about 300,000 children around the United States are diagnosed with the condition, and it's an autoinflammatory form of arthritis. So it impacts not only the joints, the muscles, and the tendons surrounding tissues, but also organs as well. So many kids get diagnosed with a condition called invaders. I hope I'm saying that correctly. I don't have the condition myself, but It is when the eye gets inflamed. So that's a very common symptom of what children get diagnosed with. However, adults with, rheumatoid arthritis can have that as well, but it's mainly seen in children.
Okay.
More often.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I had no idea that it affected so many people. 300,000. That's quite a hunk of people
Absolutely.
there. Yeah. There are several,
for children.
Right. There are several diseases that fall under the umbrella term of pediatric rheumatoid arthritis, or pediatric rheumatoid diseases, I should say. And those are JIA, which is juvenile idiopathic arthritis. That's considered the most common form of juvenile arthritis. Juvenile dermatomyositis, which is an
They are hard terms.
Yes, which is an inflammatory disease, and it causes muscle weakness and a skin rash on the eyelids and the knuckles. Juvenile lupus, which is a disease of the immune system, and it's the most common form of systemic lupus. Lupus can affect the joints, the skin, the kidneys, blood, and other areas of the body.
There's also juvenile scleroderma, and scleroderma, which literally means hard skin, and that describes a group of conditions that causes the skin to tighten and harden. There's also Kawasaki disease, which causes the blood vessel inflammation and can lead to heart complications.
That's rough.
There's also mixed connective tissue disease, and it may include features of arthritis, lupus, dermatomyositis, and scleroderma, and it's associated with very high levels of particular anti-nuclear antibody. And lastly, fibromyalgia, and this chronic pain syndrome is in an arthritis-related condition. It can cause stiffness and aching, along with fatigue, disrupted sleep, as well as other symptoms. It's more common in girls, and fibromyalgia is seldom diagnosed before puberty.
Well, we've talked about fibromyalgia before, that's for sure.
Right.
It's a pretty complex disease. I've read that there are 3 types of idiopathic juvenile arthritis. Effie, could you tell us a little bit about the 3 types of JA?
Yeah, before I do so, I just want to mention, according to the Arthritis Foundation, like you guys said, juvenile arthritis is a subset of pediatric rheumatoid diseases. And you guys pretty much covered the umbrella term used for many of them, which you just listed. And a lot of the subsets that I'm going to talk about right now, which are the 3 main ones, they tend to develop in children under 16 years and younger. Okay. So that's when the disease kind of starts. And for the 3, I'm going to butcher these names because, again, I'm not a medical doctor.
Yeah, we do it all the time.
Saying these. So oligoarticular. And so that is a type of JA that is initially only affecting 5 or fewer smaller joints in the wrists or the knees. So about 50% of children with arthritis have this form, and it potentially follows children into adulthood. So that's the main difference. And depending on the age, they begin showing symptoms around, I would say, 7 years old or,
wow.
Around then. Yeah.
It's terrible.
So over time, Yeah, so over the time, the disease will go into remission. So that's a good thing with those diagnosed with this part of the subset. But yeah, so it could go also into spreading into adulthood, though. It can go both ways. And that's the thing with juvenile arthritis. A lot of kids tend to outgrow it, especially if they get diagnosed as like babies or toddlers. However, there's certain forms where it can lead into adulthood and they are treated as adults.
Okay.
So, and then the second one, polyarticular JA, which is what I have, begins to start at any age, really, throughout the young adult. And it can affect 5 or more joints of any size in the leg, arm, jaw, or neck. And unlike adult rheumatoid arthritis, there's no blood test that can positively identify JA in children. But with adults with RA, they usually test positive for factors and antibodies associated with the disease. So there's stuff to look at like anti-CCP and RF factor, which are 2 blood markers that are, if they are positive, can indicate the disease indefinitely. However, you can still be negative and have the symptoms and the disease as well. So that's the tricky part of diagnosing.
Okay.
And usually like a physical examination, and if like any organs are inflamed, like the liver, the spleen, or even lymph nodes around the body, that can indicate some sort of infection or disease going on. And that is usually followed by imaging tests like x-rays and just monitoring the symptoms over time.
Okay.
So, yeah. And then the last but not least is systematic onset JA, and that is the least common, and that only affects 10% of individuals with arthritis. So it begins with spiking fevers up to 103 degrees and persistent rashes on the stomach and the arms. And joint swelling and damage may not appear for months or years after the fevers begin. So, a parent or parents can, easily misdiagnose their kids as just having, a cold or flu.
Right.
Some type of
a bug that hit them.
So it's really hard to diagnose kids with this form, but once inflammation begins, it can cause irreversible joint damage in the internal organs. But that can also happen with any form, not just this. And I guess the key factor here is that anemia and elevated white blood cells can be an indicator of JA too.
Okay.
With all of them.
Okay.
So that's a good thing to look at in the blood test.
Okay, great. And you say that you had which type again?
I had the second one on the list, which is polyarticular JA.
Okay.
And that is the one that affects 5 or more joints.
Okay. All right. 5 or more joints.
Are the symptoms for JRA the same for everyone?
Not necessarily. I mean, across the board, there can be pain and just morning stiffness before going to bed and waking up. And that's like the telltale signs that maybe something's wrong. But everyone's impacted differently, and in regards to treatment, what works for one person might not work for you, So that's why it's always good to get medical advice. And, if there's something that's ongoing and you don't feel well for months or weeks at a time. So that's really important to follow up and not ignore the signs of anything that's going.
And what symptoms first led you to seek out care?
Yeah, so for me, I started having like night sweats, weight gain or weight loss, like acne, like just like normal teenage stuff that would occur in anyone really. And I would have a lot of fatigue. So my doctors just chalked that up to being a teenager who was busy with school classes, after school activities. And then over time, I started developing joint pain and a little bit of inflammation in my wrist, which, at the time I thought that it might be like sport injury related. And then my knee started getting inflamed. So it was like little things here and there that added up to the disease manifesting and then me being diagnosed like 2-3 years later after the fact.
Oh, wow.
So I could have had symptoms long before, even in elementary school, and just was so subtle that no one, would have picked it up.
Okay.
And that's the scary thing about the disease. So,
Sure. That it could take years to get a diagnosis.
Yeah.
Right now, the Arthritis Foundation says there is no cure, but is there anything that can be done to treat the disease?
Yeah, unfortunately, like you said, there is no cure for the pediatric rheumatoid diseases, but although with early diagnosis and aggressive treatment, remission is possible.
Okay.
So it's just a matter of getting to the doctor, getting on medicine, or formulating a treatment plan, no matter what that is for the parents or child. Because sometimes the goal of treatment is to relieve the inflammation, control the pain, and improve the child's quality of life first and foremost. So that's how you can ultimately achieve remission So most plans involve a combination of medication, physical activity, eye care, and healthy eating, and sometimes even alternative and functional medicine is thrown in there.
Like functional medicines like acupuncture or things like that?
Yeah, acupuncture, massage, focusing more on a deeper level with diet and nutrition.
Okay.
Root factors. Sometimes there's an infection that's underlying the disease.
Okay.
So,
and what helps you the most with your symptoms, or at least back when you were first diagnosed? Because I'm not sure how you're doing right now, but when they first diagnosed you, what did they do that would help you?
Yeah, I was put on medication. I was taking a biologic called Enbrel, and that was lasting for about 7 years. It got me through college, but eventually stopped working. And that's the problem with a lot of these medicines, that patients tend to go in a trial and error basis. So they go on one medication, then have to get off and try another. So that's really frustrating when, you can't just stay on one thing that can help you for longer term. And then I also did, alternative stuff like massage, acupuncture, herbals. Diet helped me a lot because I found out that I had, moderate to severe intolerances to dairy, gluten, beef, which tend to impact a lot of people. They say dairy and gluten are like a big trigger sometimes.
Okay. Is that where the autoimmune factor comes in, where your body
is? It could be, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, like when your body's just trying to fight something, or like you have a gut imbalance, like it can really rev up the disease, because they do say the gut is connected to a lot of autoimmune diseases in general.
Yes, that's an amazing thing that they're learning, right?
And we had somebody on several months ago with the leaky gut.
Oh yeah. Did we?
Yeah.
It's all connected.
It's all connected.
Are there any short or long-term complications from GRA?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the eye inflammation and the slower than normal growth in a child, their height especially, and sometimes with the eye problems, it can cause irritation, blurred vision, increased sensitivity to light, and constant pain. So when they're in school, they have to make sure they're taking the proper measures to, take the medication they need throughout the day to function. And over time, inflammation that causes these problems can lead to more serious things such as blindness, which I didn't know myself.
No.
But there's so much information in depth when it comes to these things. But, with juvenile arthritis, medications used to treat this is sometimes it can be dangerous. It's a double-edged sword with the medications given, because they can help, but then they can also hinder, right?
Sure.
So you have to always make sure you're doing routine blood work to make sure there's no damage with the liver, or even get physical, so the doctor can see if the child is growing properly and there's no reduction in bone growth.
Well, sure.
And then
right.
other serious other serious complications, I forgot to mention anemia, which is actually tends to be a symptom in a lot of people prior to being diagnosed.
Okay.
And I had that myself. Permanent joint damage that also comes from not getting on aggressive treatment right away, and decreased growth and disproportionate limbs. So,
okay.
Wow.
Those are some of the things. Yeah.
I wonder how far, I didn't really research this, but I wonder how far back or how long ago they came up with the diagnosis of juvenile arthritis, and prior to that, how many kids might have been misdiagnosed with other things, not followed up properly, and possibly had really severe consequences afterwards. That's a shame. That's a lot of hard stuff on the body.
Yeah, I mean, 50 years ago, I think they came out with methotrexate, which was used for cancer patients, and they found that over time it worked for adults with rheumatoid arthritis. But, eventually that probably led to finding out, kids were also getting it as well. I don't really have the statistics on that, but I'm sure kids weren't really found out until later on.
Right.
Effie, I'm going to switch gears a little bit.
Okay.
The next thing, and this is near and dear to my heart, is the handicap parking, and I heard that you had an issue with this before. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, so 10 years ago, was going to college downtown, and I had a morning class, and I parked my car in my in an accessible parking spot, and I used my disability parking plaque card. And someone had called the cops on me thinking I was misusing it. And I mean, anyone who's onlooking probably would have thought the same as this person, because I literally like jumped out of my car, ran up the 3 steps and onto the train. So, I can see why they probably assumed that I was misusing it, but like they didn't know that I was diagnosed with a chronic illness. I was 5 years into my diagnosis. I had to take a 2-hour-long hot shower, ibuprofen, like to even function. So there's a lot of things that goes on behind the scenes of that. And I was inspired by my story to create this film called I'm Invisible No More. There's 3 parts. It's kind of like a documentary style film in a way, but there's actors in the first part. But I was intrigued because for the past decade now, and especially getting into advocacy since 2016, I've connected with a lot of people via social media. And I saw that a lot of people were writing about this same situation that happened to them. And a lot of people got it worse than me. Like they would get actually harassed and bullied in person, have really nasty notes written on their cars. So I was just like, okay, well, it's 2019. This happened to me in 2009. I don't know why, this is still happening to people. So I felt that right now is a good time to bring this to light, especially with everything going on with pre-existing conditions in the world and how, there's just so much miscommunication and people are not really being understood or being helped properly. So I felt that was a good time to share this. And that's kind of, yeah.
I completely understand. I mean, if you don't see a disability, then you assume there is no disability, and that's completely wrong.
Right. That's invisible disabilities are everywhere. So you are a filmmaker. Is that what you went to school for, Effie?
No, I went to school for journalism and screenwriting and public relations, but this was just more of like a passion project that I wanted to do for like the past couple of years now. So I, raised some money on Kickstarter for it and then just was promoting it on social media. But yeah, it was more based on my own experience, and I thought that it would be really a cool idea to do it. And in part 2, we interviewed some people in the Chicagoland area. I am from the suburbs, northern suburbs. So we just interviewed a few people here, and you just get their thoughts. And then part 3 is people that I've met online who are living with either an invisible illness or disability, and they from around the nation, and they gave their opinion about what they want society to know about this topic. So, each part kind of tells a story. So I wanted to include everyone's thoughts.
That's wonderful. That's really great. So where could somebody find out about these films? Where are they located? Where could we download them or purchase them?
So yeah, they're not for purchase. They're allowed to be watched for free on my YouTube channel called RA and Myself. And yeah, they're right now live, and they've been up since October. And I'm going to be posting today a behind the scenes type of film where I go kind of in depth about the symbolism of the video and kind of showcase a little bit more that wasn't seen obviously in the 3 parts. So that'll be up today around 11 a.m. Central Time, so people can check that out as well.
That's great. That's great.
Do you have any tips or hints or any other helpful advice for our listeners?
I would say listen to your intuition and always don't be afraid to ask questions. If you feel that a doctor's not right for you, don't feel obligated to stay, because a lot of people get comfortable. And always do your research on doctors beforehand. Ask for referrals, ask for advice from other patients. But first and foremost, go prepared and bring someone with you to take notes. I feel like having someone with you when you go to appointments is really helpful, because a lot of times when you're being thrown all these things at you, it can be overwhelming. So having someone to balance you out and take notes for you would be an amazing thing to have. And yeah, just don't be afraid to take action. It's your health, and health is your number one priority. And it's all we really have. If you don't have your health, sometimes you don't really have much. Like it's hard to achieve things in life when you're always constantly battling something. So yeah, a lot of people are afraid to take the medication because of the side effects. And that's sometimes mass media's fault for portraying what they do in the commercials, right? So,
yes.
And that's kind of like what scared me at first. Like they were saying, well, you can take this, but you won't get pregnant. You'll probably be in a wheelchair. It's like, a lot of people have to be careful what they say to younger people, or even people in general suffering with illness, because it could really mess with their heads, and then they delay it, and then they try to go a natural route and it doesn't work, So you have to really be conscious of that and have discernment and clarity in what your decision is going to be. So yeah, just follow your gut and take action. That's all I can really say, and do it fast, because especially with arthritis and various forms of it, when irreversible damage happens, it's not going to be able to be reversed easily, and that's when surgeries have to happen. So, have to take that into consideration.
Right, that's good advice. Well, thank you very much, Effie, for joining our show today. We appreciate you sharing the story, and we'll make sure that we post on our website links where people can find that documentary. And also, do you have any Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest accounts that you'd like us to add as well?
Yeah, everyone who's on Twitter, Instagram can follow me at Rising Above RA, and they can probably find the rest of my links too on Pinterest, and then, which is the same name. My blog is Rising Above RA as well. So
okay, great.
Type that in, and you'll find me.
Okay, great. And if our listeners have any questions or comments related to today's show, they can contact us at PodcastDX@yahoo.com, through our website, PodcastDX.com, on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, or Instagram.
And if you have a moment to spare, please give us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. As always, please keep in mind that this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment and before undertaking a new healthcare regime, and never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast.
Till next week.